And before I close tonight, I'd like to share with you all a story about the state of our great democracy here in 2013. Meloise Richardson is a poll worker in Cincinnati, Hamilton County being a critical region in the battleground state of Ohio. Now, during the course of her 25 years as a poll worker, Ms. Richardson has registered literally thousands of people to vote. Let me tell you how important voting is to Meloise Richardson. Poll worker Meloise Richardson cast an absentee ballot which was registered on November 1st, 2012. And then, on Election Day, her love of democracy and voting caused her to vote a second time. In fact, Meloise Richardson is so proud of her Democratic Party traditions that she also admits that she voted for 3 other people in her neighborhood. Meloise Richardson loves voting for the Democratic Party so much that she did it 5 times, twice for herself and then for 3 others. Actually, it was 6 times because she also sent in an absentee ballot for her granddaughter India, who, as it turns out, has developed the same love of voting Democrat as Meloise, since after India's absentee ballot was mailed, she went to a polling place on Election Day and voted again too, just like Grandma taught her to. There are currently 19 independent investigations into voter fraud in Hamilton County, and that's just the ones we happen to discover in just one county, in just one state. Now, we're told again and again that attempts to limit voter fraud are unfair, that voter suppression is the real crime. What difference does it make, some people say, if some people get to vote more than once, or if we count illegal ballots, so long as every single person who has a right to vote gets to exercise that right? My fellow Americans, voter fraud is voter suppression. Because if a person legally casts a vote for the red team and someone illegally casts a vote for the blue team, then that illegal blue vote cancels the legal red vote. They've stolen that person's vote as effectively as if they'd locked them in a cell. Now, likewise, if a person votes red twice, their first legal vote cancels a blue vote. That's how it's supposed to work. But their second red vote illegally cancels the vote of a second blue voter. It steals their vote. It suppresses their decision. Now, by voting Democrat once, Ms. Richardson had the right to match 1 Republican vote for president in Ohio. But by voting 5 more times illegally, she stole the vote of 5 Republican voters. 5. And no less effectively than if she'd put them in a van and held them at gunpoint. Now, politicians like Eric Holder maintain that efforts to limit voter fraud by requiring simple things like voter ID somehow disenfranchises the poor and especially minorities. Let's follow that racist, appallingly insulting line of reasoning to its conclusion, shall we? What are Mr. Holder and people like him really saying? That minority voters are too stupid to get to the DMV once every 4 years, the same as everyone else? Is he saying they're too lazy? Does he really believe that? I don't believe that for a second. Is he saying that they can't afford the bus fare once every 4 years to go out and get a state-issued identification? Really? Or is all he really saying, simply, is that standing in line at a government agency is such an appallingly awful experience that no one should have to go through it, which is why we should turn our health care over to the government so that it can be run like the DMV. Now, this is what happens when all we do is talk about rights without talking about the responsibilities that come with rights. If you're not willing to spend 1 or 2 hours every 4 years in order to obtain the ID necessary to vote, then you do not understand the obligations that come with citizenship, and therefore you don't deserve to vote. And I'd like those of you who find that statement to be offensive to explain your position to the veterans of this country and their families, many of whom have given their limbs, their eyesight, their hearing, and their emotional health for the rest of their lives in order to defend our right to have fair and free elections. There are 1.5 million men and women buried all across this globe who thought it was worth the trouble not to stand for an hour in line at the DMV, but rather to stand on Cemetery Ridge or Bunker Hill, or to go ashore at Normandy or Iwo Jima, or to patrol the hills of Korea, or the jungles of Vietnam, or the streets of Baghdad and Kandahar. You tell those men who never came home that it's too much trouble for you to spend a few hours every 4 years in order to keep elections free and fair. Those elections that they went and died for. What a disgraceful thing to say and to think. You need a photo ID to ride in an airplane. You need a photo ID to run a motel room. You need a photo ID to cash a check. And if you want to congratulate Mr. Holder on his opinion, you need a photo ID to enter his Justice Department building. The American people deserve free and fair elections. We've paid for them in advance. The American people deserve an end to so-called early voting so that people cannot vote in 2 or more different places on 2 or more different days. The American people deserve a system where all absentee ballots are counted enough in advance of the general election so that those votes count, and that having cast absentee ballots, that is noted on the voter rolls on Election Day. The American people deserve standardized, ink-on-paper, physical ballots, no more hanging chads or electronic machines that mysteriously provide default votes until somebody notices their need for calibration. I propose that in place of the "I voted" stickers that we all wear with pride, that we do what any other corrupted system does to ensure a fair election, that we dip our fingers in indelible ink, and that this becomes our point of pride. And the American people demand that we take our elections at least as seriously as we take buying a case of beer at a 7-Eleven by demanding a photo ID. I don't think that's too much to ask of a people, given the price that's been paid by others. To oppose these reasonable rules for fair elections is to admit that your team can't win without cheating. They apply as equally to Republicans as they do to Democrats. Voter fraud is voter suppression, and there's no place for either of them here in the greatest republic in the history of the world.